Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to Espresso with Sky, giving you a fresh perspective on faith, life, God, and the Bible. Yes, Pastor Sky over here in Malaysia, and this is already my second month here, so I'm really enjoying my time. Yeah, a lot of nice and not so nice experiences, but all of them are good, right? And I wanted to share another one with you guys, but before I start, if you guys like this content, go ahead and subscribe, like, hit the notification bell. Would love to see you guys from this point on. I had this crazy experience just the other day where I went to 4 cafes in one day, and it's not even on purpose. So let me just tell you how the story went. Well, what happened was, in the morning I went to my regular cafe, I got myself a coffee, all right? And then later in the day, like way later in the evening time, I have a meeting, right? So what happened was I thought to myself, well, this place is pretty far away, and it's kind of, you have to go through heavy traffic. So what I did was I went early, like I'm talking more than 3 hours early, and I headed out so I can skip the traffic. So I skipped the traffic, I made it to the place early so I can get some work done, right? So what happened was, I get there, I order my coffee, I sit down, and then the cafe says to me, no laptops. And I'm like, what? Like, what kind of cafe doesn't allow laptops? So here I drink my coffee, and I'm like, I gotta go somewhere else because I want to get some work done. I can't just sit around for like 3 hours. So I searched all over the internet, like, is there another place that's close by here? I found another cafe. So I went to that cafe, and this place, good coffee. It's great. I was like, perfect. Gonna be my 3rd coffee of the day. So, in order to sit down, you got to order something. So I was like, you know what? Give me another latte. I order a latte. I sit down, get ready to get my work done. And then I was like, I go to the person working there, like, what's the Wi-Fi? And he says, no Wi-Fi. And I'm like, what the heck? What kind of cafe doesn't have Wi-Fi? So I'm still like going, this doesn't make any sense. So I'm like, gosh, I gotta move again. So here I am. The whole point was to avoid traffic, to be stuck in my car, and I'm constantly driving from place to place. And now by this time, I'm in traffic. So I go to my 4th cafe. And before I sit down, I'm like, you guys got Wi-Fi? All right. You guys you guys are okay with laptops? Okay. Give me a coffee. And I sat down, 4th cafe, 4 coffees. You know what? By the 3rd cafe too, I was just kind of like, should I just cancel the meeting and go home? Like, I am tired and exhausted, right? So on that same day, before I go to bed, I always pray. And at night, before I go to sleep, the beginning of my prayer is like, God, what a frustrating day. Why'd you do this to me, kind of thing, right? Like, why'd you help me out? Why'd you do this to me? And, I could feel God speaking in my heart to me. And he said to me, why was it frustrating? And I was like, well, you should know I went early to the cafe to avoid traffic and not be in my car all day. But in the end, I was driving from place to place, and I eventually just got stuck in traffic. It's the very thing I wanted to avoid. And then God's like, well, why did it happen? And I was like, well, all those cafes are kind of stupid because they don't allow laptops, they don't allow Wi-Fi, right? So I'm kind of getting a little bit more angry. And then the question, like, I can feel in my heart, God's like, could you have avoided it? And I was like, well, yeah, I could have called ahead, and I could have looked on the internet, and but besides that point, shouldn't all cafes allow laptops and have Wi-Fi? Like, isn't that normal? I just thought it was normal. And then God says, I can feel God in my heart, like, so you assumed. And I was like, yeah, I assumed because I thought it was normal, and then ended up causing me a lot of suffering. And then the last thing I heard from God was, do you know how many people assume who I am and what I will do for them? And I was like, ugh. And then it kind of hit me at that point. And I realized, just as, here I am going from place to place, suffering all day in traffic and in my car because I was assuming about these places that I was going to. But I realized in the same way that a lot of people suffer unnecessarily because they assume things about God. Like, they assume that, oh, God is this type of God, so he's definitely going to help me. He won't let me go through any type of suffering, right? It was crazy because you got to think about the very first thing that I said to God. I said, right when I get to my evening prayer, I'm like, God, why did it happen to me? God, why'd you do this to me? And when I look back, I could have Googled it. I could have called to check. I had every resource under my fingertips, but I just assumed that these cafes had everything I needed. And I see that, a lot of times we do that to God, is we just assume God's going to do this for us. We assume that God's going to make me avoid every type of pain and suffering there is. And in the end, what I realize is it's just my fault. God has given me all the info and all the information that I need. There was nothing that was hidden. But the first thing I did was assume that it was God, right? I assumed it was God, and I blamed God for the suffering that I went through. Probably the bigger realization I had at the very end was, who is the one that should really be frustrated? And I realized in the end, it's actually God. Here is God doing his best to help us each and every day, giving us all the resources we need. And yet it is people that blame God for everything. And it's people, right, that keep saying that it's God's fault and not their own. It just reminded me of this verse in the Bible in John chapter 7, verse 24. It says, judge not according to appearance, but judge a righteous judgment. And what does that have to do with this situation is, I judge because, it's a cafe, so it should have this. But that's not true. Oh, this is God that I know, so he should be like this, and he should help me with this, and he should help me with this. But one of the things we have to realize is a lot of times God has given us everything we need in order for us to be successful and not suffer. And the problem we have is that we don't do it, or we don't utilize it. God gives us the word, and the word teaches us how to live. The biggest problem is we don't actually do it, and we end up suffering and going through pain. So that's kind of what I want to share with you guys today. I hope you guys really enjoyed this, and hope you guys have an amazing and awesome week. Remember, subscribe, like, hit the notification bell if you can, and we'll see you guys again next week. All right, everyone, take care and have an amazing, amazing weekend. God bless.